Hey everyone, I'm Bob Chatterton and welcome to this week's Trinic Tips. Thanks so much for joining in. This week we're going to talk about coloring decorative concrete. And joining me today is Warren Ness. Welcome to the show again, Warren.
Thank you.
And we're going to go over some of the reasons why we developed this coloring system that we call colors. And I don't want to make this into a sales pitch, but it is one of the products that just kind of checks all the boxes that were important to us, and I'm sure they are to you too. So, glean the information that you want. You don't have to use our product, but we're going to talk about it from it kind of leading the way with what we're doing, because it's like I said, it just checks all those boxes. So, Warren, I'm going to throw it over into your lap and let you talk about kind of the reason why we develop something new, and kind of what the highlights are and what some of the benefits are and how it affects the industry from an efficiency and a profit standpoint.
Yes, thanks, Bob. Yeah, so we designed colors to fill a void in the industry, and I'll explain what with the void as we've seen at that moment. And basically what you had in the market was a litany of different colors. Let's just look at the color sets. And some systems, contain 20 colors, going up to like 35 and beyond. So that's one set. And if you notice, the colors line has 9 colors. Those are considered primary in our world. Not primary that you would in the color world, but in the nature themed world. A lot of colored concrete predominantly is colored in nature tone sets, like stamped concrete, overlays. You got chocolate and vanilla that's out there. So that one benefit to that is having just 9 colors. And what that does is maintain harmonious color balance within one. So with other systems, you can get out of kilter. You start mixing and matching colors, the colors can get out of kilter based off that chemistry, okay? The other thing too, the other benefit is that throughout the years of training that I provided in the rockwork game, in the vertical world, that a lot of the concrete contractors were doing other services. Okay, they were doing decorative overlays. They were doing vertical. They were doing even sometimes flat work, stamped concrete. And we noticed that it's not a one size fits all for coloring systems. There's dyes, there's acrylics, there's acid stain, which is considered like an old school method, still has its unique properties from other topical coloring systems. And what was most interesting about all of that is that they all contain different systems within their own craft. So if you look at color as a whole, it's been around for eons, right? The Romans painted with it, the Egyptians painted caves with it. So there had to be almost a common denominator that we can say, hey, this product would work for most. If profit margin, like we always talk about, Bob, being important, well, profit margin is tied hip to the hip of proficiency. If you're going to increase proficiency, your profit margin goes up, your callbacks go down, and you can train if you have employees, it's even more super impactful to be proficient with that product line, that you can train your client, your labor. And when you start mixing and matching products, and in the sealer game, does the sealer work for this? Does it work for that? What porosity factor? All those different attributes start timing in. And I'm sorry to be rambling here, but on this last note is we wanted to put kind of that Swiss Army knife product together that can cover multiple different facets of the decorative concrete industry. So, and that's what we went to work on. It's just to touch on a few to start.
Yeah, one of the things that you said there, when you kind of compared it to a sealer, it really is, which generally makes everyone kind of sends a shiver up their spine in the decorative concrete world when you start talking about sealers. But look, it's topically applied color. Now, acid stain, it has its advantages. It is fairly permanent, but sometimes some of them do fade outside, right? So there's UV protection, there's adhesion. You know, there's the longevity of it. What's the lifespan of this? All those factors affect both sealer and color because they are related in the fact that they're in contact with concrete. And we all know that concrete varies immensely. I mean, you got, you know, some GFRCs that are 15, 17,000 PSI. Now there's UHPCs, you know, that are super dense. And then there's, you know, there's the, you know, the standard wet cast, you know, Quickcrete 5,000 stuff that people still do, you know, and it's a good place to start, but it all colors differently, just like it all seals differently. So I think your comment on the Swiss Army knife is a good one. Of, we wanted to keep it as simple as possible, so it wasn't super complex, but allow a simple system where people could take kind of the 9 base colors, and you don't need all 9. You know, there's some that are made for highlights, like there's a green, and you know, you could do that on some things. There's a blue that, you know, some formulas will include a blue, you know, to get a tint, but generally it's not going to go into anything that you're trying to create a wood look for or anything along those lines. So trying to keep it simple, but basically to you know, do what we do from a profit standpoint is create a low fail or no fail system that just plain does what we want it to do. And, you know, like just jotting down some of the things that were important to us. Obviously there's, you know, adhesion, you know, that it needs to penetrate the surface. It can't just be a topical paint. Color build, where you're not covering up a color, but you're able to layer it in a great way. Wash out, and you know, and then the realism of the colors. Of, you know, hey, this really looks like the real deal. Like, heck, I mean, before we started this today, you sent me some pictures of a board form thing that just looks amazing. I gotta be honest, I wasn't super thrilled with the glossy sealer, but you know, the colors are fantastic
Right.
on it. But yeah, so just if you would touch on well, you know, hey, because it's Trinic tips, and you know, we're all about, you know, helping people make more money. Talk about the proficiency part of it, like say versus, you know, a conventional coloring system that has been used on, you know, stick in your wheelhouse in rock work. You know, where's the advantage to picking the right color?
Yeah. Great question, by the way. Well, here's one facet of the answer. There's many talking points just on that question alone. But let's just look at the traditional item, compare and contrast to, let's just say, a house paint. But your traditional box store, no brand in particular, whether it's a Benjamin Moore, Valspar, excuse me. And if you look at let's just use that as a comparison. Well, they used to use that quite extensively in the industry as kind of a makeshift coloring. It wasn't made to color vertical work. Okay. Obviously it was made for house paint. What are the properties needed in house paint? Well, for one, it jumps off the board is anti-sag technology. We don't need that. We want that topical color to penetrate the vertical surface of concrete. Okay. And that's sometimes hard because you're dealing with gravity. So if you put color on a horizontal surface, it has time, well, gravity's going to force it down by nature. So having that chemistry perfect so it can bite into the concrete is just one little example. Second example, the house paint is thick. You have to water it down. Okay. When you water it down, why do you have to water it down? Well, 2 things. You need to get it through your spraying device, because everybody knows what house paint, what it looks like. It comes in different thicknesses, I'm sure, and some being more thicker than others, but predominantly they're thick. You have to add water to thin it down to get it through your spraying device. There's one thing, okay? Secondly, you have to water it down so it permeates the concrete. We're not looking for a film. House paint is developed on leaving a film, right? And so when you add water to house paint, you're degrading its binder. And that binder is a fancy word for the glue that kind of holds everything together. And when you water that stuff down, you're just kind of relying on a mechanical connection into the concrete. So if you have areas of concrete that aren't porous or super slick, you're breaking down that binding power. And more times than not, you end up with a very washed look. That's probably the biggest complaint. It was a very washed out look because that's what they were made, designed for, house paint.
It's kind of hard to get that happy medium, I noticed with that, right? Because you have a product that's really kind of designed for one coat coverage, right? If you're going to go out and buy a house paint, that's what I want. I don't want to paint it 3 or 4 times, right? So,
right.
And then you're trying to kind of convert that over to do a wash, kind of as we refer to it. The other thing I notice is it's difficult to layer colors and get the color below to kind of telescope through or show through and how to be subtle with it. There's a real fine line between getting it where you can apply it and getting it where it looks good. It's just more effort involved. I mean, not you can't do it, because you can, and we have for years, but it's it's almost like taking a Cadillac and putting it on a Volkswagen frame and saying, well, it sort of looks like a Cadillac.
Right. That's exactly it. And then it just goes down to the chemistries, back to those bullet points that when we designed it, what we looked at. And the other thing too is, like you said, the realism of effect of overlapping those colors. You're not going to get that with other systems. We were very specific in that design that it needed what we call glazing, right? It's an old Renaissance term that the old masters used to use in Italy when the Renaissance era started to bloom. They started to learn that washing different colors over one another generates a very dramatic result to the eye, right? And what the reason is, the physics behind it, the light permeates the surface and then reflects back to the eye. So as the light exits, it hits that top coat, believe it or not. And it starts to, so let's just say you did a red base and did a blue wash over the top, wash meaning translucency, like you talked about, Bob. Now it's going to be purple because red and blue make purple. And so knowing that is important. And secondly, having the chemistry to support that. And that's what we did with the colors. We thought it was very important because we're not into faux finish. We're not into faux finishing the surface. We want to let the concrete kind of, the texture of the concrete or like in wood grain, right? Or rock. We want that texture to be authentic. We don't want to faux finish it. We want that to look like wood, and faux finishing looks like faux finishing. Nothing against it, but it does have a different look or realism than something that just has texture, realistic texture. And then all we're doing, and key word here, bold, italicized, is thin. A thin layer, and that goes back to the house paint. It's very thick. You start lapping colors, you start losing your authenticity of your color.
I mean, look, I'm super amateur at this. I won't say I'm a virgin in it, but I pretty much have only got into it since we sort of partnered up for that. But so I say that to say, I'm sort of a living testimony to realize, how simple it actually can be. That, I was super intimidated by it. We had a previous product called Versacolor, and I got pretty good with that. I got pretty good at doing different wood looks and things like that. It was fairly easy to use, so boosted my confidence a little bit. But then switching when we went from, using Versacolor to colors, and you brought up all those points of, here's how colors work, here's how your eye perceives it. It could have been overwhelming. And I want to say I started to go down that road until you went, well, time out. Let's grab a whiteboard. This, see the difference, and, and once you get your hands on it, use it. It's fairly simple to comprehend. You see is what you get, right? So it was great to be able to put it on thin, like you just said, and then see what those different changes are in it. And then when we were out at Guthmiller's place out there, how do you take concrete that looks good, right? Because we did reclaimed concrete down below, right? And just bring it out. And I couldn't imagine like how little I don't want to say how little skill, maybe I do, but let me just say it was how simple it was, to learn how easy that was to go, hey, just put this color a little bit here, if we wash this out a little bit more, see how it brings out that feature. It was easy enough that I would say if I can do it, anyone could do it. So I went, and we, I and Chad and Joe and Jeremy and Brandon, we all talked about looking at it from a profit standpoint, right? So easy application without sacrificing quality equals profit. And even though Guff Miller didn't pay us for that, but so but that's the thing that kind of stuck in my mind was, hey, this is a super good tool with very little education, on the application of how you can do this to increase your profit. Because man, if it was me and I didn't know that, or you didn't show me that, I would have been there for a full day versus a morning.
Right. Yeah, and I think that was good to see out there, because that's the first of many, right? That reclaimed concrete look, you can split that many ways, right? Like you said, we didn't have to color it. It's great right out of the womb, but you don't get that aged appearance. And as you can see how the colors performed on that, because had we used another system, we may not get those effects. And one effects that I want to touch on is like you said, the system alone, if you look at the pigment system that we've came up with, it's earth derived. Like you said, it looks so real. Well, it came out of Mother Earth. So when we do these, like what we did at Gunthermiller's, where I used a lot of water, remember that?
Yeah.
A lot of water. That's key to the look, and it's key to that system of providing that realism. You need that to bleed in. If you don't bleed in, you're just full finishing. You're not using the porosity or, the porosity in the texture of the concrete to reveal the results.
Yeah, exactly. And for you guys watching this, I can tell this is going to be probably a first in a series that we'll talk about the colors, because we want to just kind of touch on the fact that there's like certain touch points, like I said, that colors, comparing them to sealers, need to meet and have to kind of check those boxes. But we could get into a super long discussion about, well, how do you wash them out? Because like Warren was saying, so yeah, we mixed colors together, we added water to it, we applied it, and then we put more water on it to get certain effects. And we can do some slides probably on a future show that kind of show what it looked like. But for to keep it kind of simple or basic on this one, is it did look good, like you said, Warren. I mean, it looked good with no color, because it was concrete that we were making look like concrete, right? We threw aggregate in to get the broke stone edge. We did, different pockets for where the tie spikes were, and all of that. However, it was, it was like a 2.5D, until you put some color on it, and then it really looked like we had taken reclaimed concrete and PL 400 it to the front of the building.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much for that project. I mean, that's that product line. And I'm not saying it being part on our colors. I'm saying it from an area of truth. That chemistry is what allowed for that look. Could you do it in different products? Sure. We don't know what the results are going to be. It's different. I always look at the pizza comparison, right? You got 3 main ingredients, dough, sauce, and cheese. The reality is, just out of 3 components, one of those components changes, the output changes. And those changes can be drastic. So if you're looking at pizza, Domino's is quite different than Pizza Hut, believe it or not. And those 3 main raw ingredients of dough, sauce, and cheese produces a different output. So we were very specific on these bullet points that we wanted to hit, and covering all these bases. Very hard to do with one swing of the bat. but I feel very confident we succeeded in at least addressing what was missing in the industry as far as topical colorants.
Yeah, and again, longevity is important. I mean, we put it through some pretty good tests. I thought I was going to pass out the day you said you pressure washed it after you applied it, but it worked. And but had some pieces outside, stuck them underneath our high intensity UV light for a week. And by the way, you still owe me for the electric bill. But all the testing looks amazing. The proof's in the pudding. We'll see what it's like when water runs over it, on different cars, because people put different textures, and you have different surfaces that it goes over. Like we talked in the beginning, there's a million factors that go into how well it performs. But yeah, so I think that the key component, or one of the key components to profitability in this, is obviously longevity. I mean, it's the longevity of your company, not just the longevity of one single project, because that project plays into that company and your reputation. That's your brand,
Right.
And I know that, you at Rock Sculptor, Joe at the Concrete Dog, and, I can go down the list there, that it's a point of pride that we take in our work, because we like to do good work. But it's also imperative, no matter what your company is, that your quality is up there. Nike wouldn't be in business if their shoes blew out 2 weeks after you bought them.
That's a good point. We get wrapped up on the whole aesthetics, but being exterior graded and being able to handle those elements you talk of, water features, water submersion, coping rocks, things that have watering on it 24/7, and being able to handle that is equally as important. Like you said, it can look good, but it's form and function, aesthetics and function. I would take functionality every day, because like that both. I usually hit both, but in the grand scheme of things, it has to perform no matter how good it looks or what have you. And definitely, and I know it hits that bar. I'm not, me myself, put it under some rigorous, circumstances, whether it's pressure washing, areas that are very slick concrete is not really that good bonding to traditionally. Polished surfaces, if you look at the table I did at the Plan B, all these little things, we're able to stress test it and see how well it performs in the industry, not just in the lab.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I tell everyone about all the products that that we make, or anyone makes, is that fact is, review all the testing and then test it yourself and see what you think, and get some history on it. And so, and then people are using products kind of past what they were designed for. Not that that's a bad thing, but kind of like, heck, I've got people that are using, these colors on floors, which, they ask all the time, will it work? Well, yeah, it'll work. I'm not sure exactly, how well for how long, because we haven't actually done that and had applications out there, like it's not on the floor of Grand Central Station yet, like,
Right.
will it handle 100,000 people a day or 500,000 people a day? I don't know, but the nice thing with that is we keep getting this feedback, and a lot of the guys in our industry are multifaceted, right? So they're, a lot of the guys now seem to be, the trend is, hey, let's add vertical carving to our toolbox. Heck
Right.
yeah, it's a great tool, and don't be afraid. It's not that hard. Again, if I can learn how to, make it happen, then probably anyone can.
Right.
But in the same is true that people are taking some of the colors and using that coloring system on all different decorative concrete. And let's face it, if it fails, it's not good for the industry. So kind of the caveat of the thing was, let's make it tough first, And if we can make it aesthetically pleasing in addition to that and easy to use, so it becomes aesthetically pleasing, then that would be a great bonus.
Yeah, agreed. And one thing I want to touch while we're on this, so like all the existing products on the market, there's hundreds and thousands of them. But just for the viewers out there, I want to break down like just some basic core components of topical colorants, what's out there. So, you know, you got your dyes. Dyes are typically, you know, organic based, and they're very thin. They dry out very quickly. A lot of times they are accompanied with some type of solvent to help permeate into the surface and dry. You can put a sealer on the same day. Okay, the next step up is your let's go right into acid stain. A lot of people still use acid stain. Well, why? Because it etches into the concrete and it's thin. It doesn't put any type of film, kind of like a dye. Dye is so fine and so small in particle size, almost like a tea. If you spill coffee on a white cotton shirt and it leaves a brown stain, that's the kind of like a dye right there. And same is true in concrete. Okay, so you got the acid stain. What are the proponents? Well, you got to deneutralize it. Kind of a negative. What's the positive? So a lot of times you can get some really bright tones out of it. It has no film. It etches into the concrete. And then when you seal it, like Bob was saying earlier, when you seal it, that's the other component. You know, when you seal it, you can color enhance it. You can go matte, you can go gloss, and film size is going to drastically impact that coloring. Moving on, now you go into the acrylics. Well, there's other systems that have a multitude of different colors, viscosity bases. We were very specific, and we've already kind of touched on those points. And it may be a little daunting looking at the color chart of 9 colors for some people, right? Black, white, yellow, got some browns. I'll explain why we have 3 browns in a second. And then a green and a blue, like Bob alluded to. The green is built for like mosses and lichens and aging effects. And black and white is going to make you gray. The browns are very specific because when you water them out, at least on the color chart, they may look similar. So you may think you need the one brown, or maybe this brown work better. But the true color comes out when you wash them out, like we talked.
Yeah.
Thinning them out, and that thinning out overlays over a specific concrete. In GFRC world, a lot of times they're using CSA blends. So that base color grade becomes important now. It's kind of what we've, again, GFRC, vertical, overlays, all these contractors are integrating these facets. So we wanted to hit all of that. And I want you to know that within that color set, those 9 colors, keep it simple. Black and white make gray. Believe it or not, gray inherently is beautiful for rock. If you look at a lot of rock, it contains a lot of gray. So right off the tone, right off the hit, you can vary different levels of gray just by mixing black and white. And in fact, I encourage you, if you guys are using colors out there, to experiment with levels of gray. I know I'm rambling a bit here, but a lot of this stuff is pretty important. And looking at the yellow, if you look how bright that yellow is, like, well, I'm never going to use that yellow. And wow.
But we did.
Yeah, it's deceiving. And what it is that yellow is probably the max yellow you're ever gonna, the brightest. I need to have the brightest, rudest pigment in that raw form, even though I'm going to be using very little percentages of that raw color on areas of concrete. But I need that. I need that mother's milk. I could always add water to the milk, but I can't go the other way. I got to get the milk right from the cow, right? So I want you to know, when you look at Simpsonite yellow, that's made to be mix and matched. This whole system is designed so you can mix and match colors, make your own tonal sets, which will do 2 things: proficiency and being able to deliver what your client wants, as opposed to going up to a color chart, you know, specking it out or looking at a specific color and how do I match that? Well, that was on flat work that you've seen, ma'am. That was a soft finish. This is on the GFRC top. So kind of give you a little bit of background of the color set and some of the nuances involved with that.
Yeah, I think you touched on, I mean, first of all, we'll do a whole at least one show, probably two, quite honestly, on blending colors. So we'll get into the nuts and bolts of that because that's definitely a topic by itself. Because I learned a lot of tints and washes and how do you get that, and what the advantages are, and how do you actually do it, right? Like
Right.
show me how that happens. um, but the one thing I think you touched on there that was a key point is the ability to wash it out, to back up, basically. If you go, holy crap, that yellow is too bright. All right, well, let's wash that out a little bit and, rinse that down. And then, whether it's add more water, wash it out, like application technique, like we did it for the rust, right, on the Corten
Right.
steel at Chad's. And when you
Point.
were
Good
mixing that,
point.
I'm like, this is going to look awful. This is my super amateur way of looking at it. Plus, I might have been tired
Right.
and cranky. But man, it did just the opposite. Like it popped it. And see, that's, to kind of bring this all to a close for today, I think the key points that I want everyone to really catch is it's super important to be able to do color well. It's important to have it last. It is easier to do than you think it is. I let the intimidation factor hold me back for a long time. And now, like last week, I was out helping a couple guys do a big boulder, and I'm excited about it. I enjoyed it. It was fun. And I can't wait to see what it looks like when it's finished, because those guys are getting pretty good at it. They haven't been doing it for more than a few months, but their work is escalating quickly. And they added this tool to their toolbox to do more concrete. They're more profitable. The profit margin is much higher doing what they're doing than what they were doing. And so they're keyed in and keyed up about it. And as they're learning the system, I'm learning how important it actually is and what an advantage that a good coloring system is. And again, I know we talked a lot about colors and a lot about the specifics. We use the term a lot, the name of it, but quite honestly, it may not be the only good thing out there. Check them all out, find out which ones work for you. We'll try the different techniques. If you have any questions for us, you need any information from us, obviously you can reach me, drop your comments below. Warren, what's the best way? Instagram, Facebook, email, whatever you
Instagram,
prefer.
Facebook, you go to rocksculptortraining.com or rocksculptor.com. Both contain contact information. I'm on Facebook and Instagram on the Rock Sculptor, and Warren Ness on the Facebook. So yeah, feel free to reach out. Any questions, concerns. Want to see you guys succeed. And like Bob said, try them all out. See what works the best. And yeah.
Yeah, I think, what I'm kind of excited about is seeing, now that I understand, how important or how deficient the industry was, I'm super excited to see how people will blend systems. Like I still love acid stain. We did that for years and years and years, right? Like, but you could do an acid stain, highlight it with something else, and you start blending all these things. And, it's like a kid in a candy store that goes, hey, I can do, and I want, and I can do that too. And it just keeps rolling. And there's these, this wave of inspiration that comes in with the foundability of I can do this and I can do it well. So
Yeah, I agree. And I not to tag on that as we close this thing out, but cooking is a good example. You can buy box dinners, add water, quarter stick of margarine, some milk, mix, bake at 350, whatever it is. That works for some it doesn't. Some people like to enjoying the passion of cooking and being able to kind of control those knobs and switches like you talk about, Bob, of acid stain, and I'm going to come in and do this, and then I'll do an antique coat.
yeah,
There's so many
it's
ways.
limitless.
Yeah, it's endless. And I think that's where the excitement is. If you got one life to live and you got passion for this craft, I think most are going to lend on the side of being able to control that and every day's a journey, and you know, kind of a deal.
Yeah. We got to close, but I think just the thought I had is we should really do a show on how do you fix a color. Like if a integral color of a countertop comes out messed up, if there's anomalies or things like that, right? How do we use a system like this to fix it? Right. So you don't have to go back over it or redo it. Right. But anyways, guys, we got to get going. Warren's got a project that he's got to get out to. So thanks, Warren, for joining us. Drop your comments below. We want to hear from you. The way that YouTube works is just like any other social media. So the more you share it, the more you pass it around, the more you like it, hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe, do everything like that. That'll help us out, reach more people, and the more people we reach, the more profit there will be. So thanks so much for joining us, and have a great day.